We may envision the beautiful trees outside these windows, the birds in flight peacefully soaring above our sanctuary, and the waves of Lake Michigan gently lapping at the shoreline. We experience grace when we lovingly share our time and energies, letting go of resentment and choosing forgiveness, or when we use our words and actions to help others. We know that by giving of ourselves, we share the beauty of divine's unending grace. Whether out in the world or deep in our hearts, we feel deeply and abundantly blessed. The presence of God within me is my peace. From the center of my being, love flows, wisdom flows, prospering, guiding, and harmonizing all my concerns. And so it is. Amen.
Guide me.
It's our time of meditation. So if you would, please get comfortable in your chairs. And what I hope you experience in today's meditation is the underlying unity that permeates all of our existence. To begin, I'd like to share these words from Myrtle Fillmore, one of our founders. Be still, be still, be still. God in the midst of you is substance. God in the midst of you is love. God in the midst of you is wisdom. Now, if you're comfortable, please close your eyes. Take a few deep breaths. Allow your body to relax with each exhale. Release any tension you may be holding in your muscles. Bring your attention to your breath. Notice the sensation of the breath as it enters and leaves your body. Place your hand on your heart. Feel the rise and fall of your chest with each inhale and exhale. With each breath, imagine your awareness expanding outward, encompassing your immediate surroundings, and gradually extending to include the entire universe and beyond. Picture a radiant light at the center of your being, representing your true essence or soul. See this light expanding and merging with the light of every other living being, an element in the universe. As you visualize this unity of light, allow yourself to feel a deep sense of connection with all that exists. Sense the interplay of energies and the flow of life force that connects every atom, every being, and every aspect of existence. In this expanded state of awareness, allow yourself to experience a profound sense of oneness with the universe. Let go of any sense of separateness or individual identity and surrender to the feeling of being part of something greater than yourself. As we move into the silence, remain in this state of expanded awareness and oneness. Allow yourself to simply be without striving or effort. Now gently bring your awareness back to your breath. Take a few deep breaths. Maybe wiggle your fingers and toes. And slowly open your eyes. Take this moment to reflect on your experience. Notice any feelings of peace, joy, or connection that may have arisen during the meditation. Perhaps you have a deeper appreciation for the underlying unity that binds all of existence together, fostering a sense of compassion empathy, and reverence for the interconnected web of life. So it is. Amen. This music team, I just get, it gives me shivers. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I forgot in my welcome, I didn't do a very good job. I was so focused on me. I forgot to introduce Kit, who is speaking today. She's really the show, not me. Kit Holmes, Reverend Kit Holmes.
Yes, thank you, Carol and Ernie and Brad and Meg and Roland. Yes, thank you to the musicians. And thank you. I want to give a special thank you to Bob White, who is doing his ever-loving best to learn the sound system. And yeah, I see his brain spinning back there. Yes, yeah. Thank you, Bob. And run the camera and. So with that, since Meg brought it up about the donations for the sound system, I would ask to also that you hold in mind the perfect sound technical person who can do all of the things. We had somebody for a short amount of time, and he moved on to other things. So let's just hold that. And the reason I say this it's about paradox. We're in the room. This is such a good segue. I'm really brilliant this morning, just feeling it. You hear one thing in the room, you get the energy in the room. You feel the music, the prayers and the singing and all of that together. But in this day and age, our online presence is vital. Absolutely vital to the success and the continuation of a community, of any community. We know most everything is online these days. And when we put something out there that is not really like top notch in quality, people just click on by or don't click at all. There is it used to be that our attention spans were somewhere around 40 or so seconds. All of the marketing stuff that I hear now, especially online, is if you don't catch somebody in the first 5 seconds, I'd do it. If something comes up and it's bad quality video, bad quality audio, I'm not even going to listen. It doesn't matter what the message is. So there's the paradox. One of them, the paradox of living. We're in a spiritual community where we've got the human stuff we got to take care of every day. Every day. And the song Love First, the reason that I chose that song is, as you're studying, I know most of you are in the book study of the Paul Hesselbeck with the heart-centered metaphysics. It's the macro, the micro, it's the human and the divine, it's the big picture, it's the little piece of it. It's the facets of the multifaceted presence, God, whatever name you want to give it. We are little bitty facets of that. We contain, all of God is in us, but we individually are not all of God. So it's that, but, it's both and. It's not either or. That's the beauty of paradox. That is the whole point of this being. We have this beautiful thing, the mystery of life, the mysteries of the universe that we have since the beginning of time, trying to figure out, categorize, and make it fit in our little human boxes. And we don't need to. We get to share in that mystery, the ever-expanding, ever-evolving nature of God. Love first. I saw the ocean in a raindrop, the desert in a grain of sand, the forest in an acorn, and the whole world in my hand when I lived life love first. When I was here a couple weeks ago, we were still in this chapter for the month of April about the creation, the process of creation, divine creation, inspiration. Everything begins with an idea. Everything begins with love, and then there are spiritual principles that kind of keep everything together and kind of in some orderly chaos. If you think about, I heard you got the storms up here last night too. We got them down in Manistee, and quite a light show, and some wind and some other things, hail and so forth. We didn't get the hail, thankfully. But if you think about it, the idea of electricity has been around since the formation of an atmosphere. Our ability as humans to capture it and use it and put it to use for us took a whole lot of time to get there. But the idea was there. The idea that in the one mind, in that infinite intelligence, the same thing with gravity. These are principles. These are, we call them in physics, we call them the laws of physics, the principles of physics. They have always existed. It just took us a little while to get it figured out of how to make those things useful to us. We don't change the laws. We have never changed the laws of physics. We have never changed the laws of electricity. We have never been able to. We simply use them to our benefit or to the detriment, depending on our intention. But the idea is there. That's where it begins. That is love. That is God. That is the big kahuna of the all-knowing, the all-present, the all-powerful. We get to do it on a small scale. So talking about the paradoxes, if we think about things like love, love is the idea, law is what makes it possible. Paradox is, I'm going to give you this, I love this, from a book called The Big Book of Christian Mysticism from Carl McColman. Paradox, as the physicist Niels Bohr tells us, explodes our everyday linear concept of truth and falsehood by positing two qualities that exist on a single continuum. The quote is, the opposite of a correct statement is a false statement. The opposite of a correct statement is a false statement, he claims. But the opposite of a profound truth may be another profound truth. Paradox thus points us to the mysterious place where two or more profound truths pull against each other in a tension that cannot be resolved by the clever machinations of the rational mind. So in other words, it keeps us in the mystery. It keeps us in the conundrum. It keeps us in that place of two things that appear to be opposing are not. They can both be true at the same time. How many of us can love someone absolutely deeply and be furious with them at the same time? That is paradox. That is paradox. I love that the famous Groucho Marx said, I don't want to be a member of any, I don't want to join any club of which I would be a member. That is a paradox. I mean, it gives you that little brain tease, and both things can be true at the same time. So we have this idea, first idea, first in mind, and then it comes through us. We are the vessels. We are the vehicles which with which, did I say that? Yes. Spirit uses us, needs it to express itself to further its evolution. And the principle and the personal, that is a paradox of the human. We have the principle that comes down into the personal, the divine idea first, and the human capacities to bring it into form. So the ideas are given to us. They are available to us at all times. We just don't always recognize them. We have become practiced at ignoring them. Why? Because a lot of them make us uncomfortable. Because it requires us on the human scale to evolve and grow and change. It's like, well, what's that all about? I don't know. That's the great mystery. Why are we here? We are in this divine dance. We are in this dance all the time. When we open to it, when we open to the idea that everything is possible, Everything is available to us in every single moment. Things become open and available to us. We start to recognize that it's there. The paradox of the human part of it is we get so wrapped up in it's got to be a certain way. It has to look a certain way because we came in with the human capabilities, the mental capacities to organize, to categorize, to put things together in a row so that we can communicate with each other. That's the basic part of it. And then we get things like Newton's laws, physics laws, and figuring these things out. Somebody who was absolutely open in a certain way to sit one day and go, why is it that when I let go of this thing, it falls to the ground? What's that about? And stayed with it and stayed with it and stayed with it and made these theories and meditated on these ideas to bring it about. To say, well, how can I put this into something usable, helpful to the human race, even just to figure it out? Well, we had all of these things, and Newton figured out the whole thing about gravity and force and motion, and a body in motion tends to stay in motion until an opposite force moves it another way, equal and opposite force, all of those things. And all of the things that allow us in the human to do what birds do, to move an incredible amount of metal and other materials through the air, sometimes 35,000 feet, 7 miles up, above the earth. And it's not that long ago that we've been able to do this. But think about everything that began from that place, that first idea, that divine idea that said, a human looking at a bird saying, how can we do that? And the Wright brothers, bicycle builders, jumping off a cliff in North Carolina. But the use of physics, those laws, those immutable laws. Spiritual law is the same. That's the paradox. It happens on the macro, happens on our level. We have to be open and willing to see and believe that everything is indeed possible. Electricity. We just take it for granted. We take for granted air travel. We take for granted air travel until one crashes. And it's not because the laws of physics changed, it because something happened on the human scale that wasn't cooperating with the laws of physics. And gravity takes the plane down. So it's the both and. It's the both and. If we think about, I was going to tell you this other thing too, just because it's interesting. Because I worked at a compact disc manufacturing facility for 6 years, way back in the early '90s, late '80s, '90s, when compact discs were the thing. And the idea of the disc and how to store information on a disc was invented before somebody ever figured out how to play it, how to make a player. The technology, it was a divine idea of using the digital format of ones and zeros, and they came up with these things to create what would store it. But it took another 5 or 8 years before somebody said, oh, this is how we can make it so we can read that. Isn't that crazy? Yeah. Side street, sorry. If we think about our paradoxes, you think about most of them involve this thing called the hero's journey. Whether it's Star Wars or whether it's Harry Potter or whether it's Lord of the Rings or whatever, just life. It's just life, right? Everything comes from a divine idea, a divine nudge that is moving us forward that says, time to grow, time to change, time to evolve, time to get out there, express more of itself. God expressing, until we're kind of, kicked out of the nest with some thing that annoys us. Like, oh, and I don't want to do this. We get the calling, I don't want to do this. But then we are put on that journey, and everything is given to us along the way. And yes, there's challenges and sword fights and dragons and all kinds of things to slay. But everything that we need to evolve is there. And again, we get caught in that paradox of, well, if I'm a divine being, then everything should just be easy and it should just flow, and it really does. We just resist it. That's where we run into problems. We resist everything that's in front of us, saying, no, that's not mine to do. No, I want to do this over here. Like, well, that's not yours to do. That's somebody else's. So it's leaning into being spiritual, accepting that we're human, accepting that we're going to make mistakes, that we're going to do these things that don't feel really good a lot of the time. But when we do the journey, it brings us back home, but it brings us back home in a new way. That's the whole idea here. There's Richard Rohr, in his book Falling Upward, says the goal in sacred story or the hero's journey is always to come back home after getting the protagonist to leave home in the first place. Is that a contradiction, a paradox? Yes. But now home has a whole new meaning never imagined before. As always, it transcends but includes one's initial experience of home. And our initial experience of home as a spiritual being is oneness. Our initial experience when we come in is we know oneness. There is that deeper part of us that knows it. And then everything around us kind of whittles away at it or props it up. When my experience with coaching people, and I've learned this over the years, that those that have come in with a really good sense that they have been loved and supported and nurtured, you can ask them to do anything in the world and they're like, okay, here's some tools. They're like, yeah, I get a little stumbling block here, but they just take off. And then I work with the people that didn't get that big nurturing stuff, and they do one of two things. They either quit because the belief is, I'm not worthy, I'm not worth it, I can't do it, or they say, forget y'all, I'm going to do this despite you. And they go through a whole lot of trial and tribulation as well. And I'm not saying that the former is an easier life, because it comes with its own set of, shall we say, beliefs, and maybe like some privilege and some arrogance. Like, of course I can do anything in the world. I'm the best there ever was. And then you learn, no, there's these other ways of doing things with each other. We are all here in this time, in this place, for a good reason. And our life's work is to, I think it was Carolyn Mace that said this, our life's work is to figure out what our life's work is, and then spend the rest of our lives perfecting that work. Maybe it was Brene Brown, I'm not sure. Sorry about the misquotation if I did. The paradox is we can only have the experience of oneness at the level of consciousness, the conscious awareness that we are one. We're already there. We come in being one, not separate, not anything else. And the paradox is we spend our entire lives trying to regain that sense or thinking that we're separate, when all the while we're right back at home. We're always at home. We're at home in God. We're at home in spirit. One of the things that I experienced, and this was, it's a God thing. I prepare for a talk. I do a lot of reading. I look for quotes. I look for all these other things to bring in. And inevitably, other things want to come through. I have learned that on those days, because there's some days when I come and I speak to you and I'm like, yeah, I'm, and then like this experience today was, there were other things that needed to come through me in terms of emotion and some things that came up for me this week, being human and divine. And I've learned to let the human part, the feelings, the emotions, move through me. It used to be I'd say, I'm really sad today. I'm having a lot of grief, but I'm going to buck up. I've got a talk to give, and I'm going to inspire. I'm going to be cheerful and all those things. And I'm not saying I'm sad today, but I had a lot of emotion the last couple of days, some really deep stuff, and just like kind of crying at the drop of a hat. And I trust that what needs to come through comes through, because I get my human self out of the way to let Spirit do its work through me. And one of the most joyful and rewarding ways that I do that is when I get to sing for you. That's where I really connect. And I know that Spirit was at work because I pick the songs. I have to pick them in advance so that the band can get the music and all that kind of stuff ahead of time and do the rehearsals. But I always find there's something else that brings it up, brings it back around of why I chose a specific song. And Love First, it hit me last night, was, I wrote that song almost 20 years ago, before I was really heavily into, I was into metaphysics, and I was just at the beginning stages though, and understanding flow and understanding the importance of emotion and moving emotion and living from my heart rather than my head. And all these years later, that I find myself in my evolution, my spiritual evolution of being a human being, as I'm really beginning to see the joy of living from here. Letting down my guard. Strength and vulnerability, that is a paradox of living. We think of vulnerability as like, I'm going to get attacked, I'm going to be hurt, it's like, no, vulnerability is one of the strongest things you could ever possibly be, because it means you're standing in your truth no matter what anyone else thinks, no matter what anyone else says. When you can stand in front of people and say, I have a lot of grief, and yet I'm really joyful, because I can feel it. I spent a lifetime not feeling things, not talking about things, keeping it stuffed and bottled and, powder keg-ish. Anybody know what I'm talking about? And you don't do it all at once. I didn't do it all at once. It was a process, the hero's journey. The next spiral, the next cycle of the spiral. Oh, here's this lesson again, different level. But each successive time around is, I get what it means to open this, to live love first. Not head first, love first. Love is God. Love is the way. Spiritual principle, law makes the way possible. Those beautiful things that keep us between the shore on a river, or the lanes on the highway if you want to go that way, if you stay in your own lane. My invitation to you is to recognize the freedom that comes from the caveat, yes, when you first start practicing living from here, most of you already know how to do that. But if you're not used to it, it's scary and it hurts. There's a lot of pain involved with it. But once you get through it and you begin to realize it's only going to last this long, I'm letting it go, but I can feel it. That is where true freedom lies. The paradox of knowing there's going to be some hard times and things are going to hurt and they're not going to be fun always. But I am living, you are living, we are living our truth, our absolute biggest, brightest spiritual selves when we are really honest with what we're feeling. And I'm not talking about being obnoxious about it. I'm not talking about just like, here I am today, and here's my life story. But in the moment, let your yes be yes and your no be no, no matter what anybody else says about that. I had a little dream about that last night. I'm going to be late. I haven't taken a shower. Service starts in 30 minutes. And the person in the dream wanted to show me, had this tablet like an iPad or something, and I'm like trying to get out the door. And she says, I want to show you the pictures of my nieces. And I'm like, my old self would have stayed and shortchanged myself. It's like, no, I have to go. And I just looked at her and I said, without any explanation, was simply, here's my boundary, here's my truth. I have to go. Did it kindly, didn't yell, didn't say, do you know how important I am? It was, I have to go. Catch up with you later. Little acts of those things free us from all of the resentment and all of the things that we carry with us when we don't speak our truth. We will be supported. People will drop out of our lives when we speak our truth. Paradox. We will be supported. We will still be loved. People will drop out of our lives. I'm grateful. I'm really, really grateful. Cool. I'm going to finish with Carolyn May's quote, and or maybe I'll finish with Rumi. Carolyn May says, in keeping with the paradoxical nature of the divine, this vast, sacred, living, breathing, holy cosmos is also very intimate, for we each reside within the nature of God. And the bridge between this impersonal cosmic system and each one of us is prayer. Prayer is how we communicate with the cosmos. It is the means through which we make ourselves known and heard in the vastness of space. And it's how we receive guidance in return. Prayer is our channel of communication, the direct line between the soul and the divine. We are built for this divine intimacy and for the awe, belief, and inspiration it creates. So lean in. As Rumi says, this is this beautiful, beautiful paradox. In order to understand the dance, one must be still. In order to truly understand stillness, one must dance. Human thought is good. Absolutely, we need it. And come from here. Practice coming from here, knowing you're divine. Yeah. I have to give you just a silly one because I just have to. Great paradox from the great baseball great Yogi Berra. Nobody comes here anymore. It's too crowded. I just had to give you that. Thank you so very much. I feel a little scattered, but I also feel very grounded, and thank you for letting me be in my own paradox today.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. We want to welcome any first-time guests. I do see some newer people here. We do have a packet of information that will give you more information about who we are, why we're here, maybe the why, I'm not sure about that, who we are. But it's in the back. Just see one of the ushers and they can help you with that. Also, welcome back to some of our snowbirds. I see some very tan people in the audience. Good to have you all back again. Also, I want to let people know that we do have prayer chaplains available after the service. Generally, someone stands here. There's also someone in the hallway. So if you have a special prayer request, please do take advantage of that service. It really is marvelous, wonderful. And what I have now on next line, any additional personal comments? No, I don't. So I think we're done. Let's form our circle, which is what we do at the end, and let's say our closing prayer. Yeah, right, we're kind of from here. All right, before we go into the very, very, very closing, let's say another brief prayer if we could. Just close our eyes for a moment and say thank you, thank you, thank you, God, for this opportunity to be together, to be a part of this amazing community of love, support, compassion, courage, and all the other good words that you can think of. We're so fortunate to be part of the one, and we're so fortunate to be here together. So again, it's with grace and with deep appreciation. I say thank you and amen.
Amen.
If there are people you would want to, people, things, animals, doesn't matter, anyone that you might want to recognize or say a special prayer for, feel free to say their name now into the circle. Jessica Thompson. And with that, we'll say our prayer of protection.
The love of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God